Welcome to CityCast Denver. I'm Bree Davies, and here's what Denver's talking about. So today we're talking about a small move hoping to make a big change for childcare, the potential to extend the amount of time you can spend at a bar, new unionizing efforts, and more. Joining me is Denver Post City Hall reporter Elliot Wenzler. Hello, Elliot.
Hey, Bree. Thanks for having me back.
So let's just jump right in. Again, you cover City Hall. You are at our city council meetings every week. We had some big stuff happen this week, as always, pretty much every week at City Council. They make big decisions. Actually, this is a small one that they're hoping to be big. So I want to say, as a parent, I'm lucky enough to have family support, and I don't rely on childcare as many of my friends do in the same way. I have friends that pay double their rent or their mortgage for childcare. I have friends that have put their kids on waiting lists before they were born to get into childcare. So I think that's kind of just the broader picture of what folks are dealing with here in Denver. And recently, City Council made a small change this week that will hopefully start to tackle this issue. This is a licensing change, I believe. Elliot, can you just explain what they did and how it relates to childcare?
Yeah, so the city council approved an ordinance that will eliminate the local licensing requirement for childcare facilities. So basically, it's just one step that childcare facilities don't have to go through to open up. The goal is to try to make it easier for folks to decide to open that kind of business, with the hope that, more of those businesses will start to bring some of those costs down, which, as you mentioned, are quite high. And every parent I know is dealing with this. So one thing I want to make clear right off the bat is that the state licenses these separately. So this isn't like, oh, suddenly just anybody can open these. Obviously, there would be concerns with that for safety and health reasons.
It's not changing who can open it or the safety regulations or any of those steps that they take to become a childcare facility.
Right. Yes. So still, anybody who wants to open up this kind of facility has to pass fire codes. They have to have the right amount of training for their staff. They have to have the right ratio of kids to adults. All of those kinds of things that would, come to mind as a concern for safety for the kids are still, in place, and they still have to do those things. But now they just won't have to go through one more process, which has a small fee associated with it as well. And so the hope is that it will just begin to, knock out some of these barriers that are in the way for businesses.
And again, this is such a typically a woman-owned business. This is a business where we see, I'm just thinking about where my child goes to childcare a couple days a week. It is all women, actually. And the woman that runs his and owns his childcare place has been trying to open a school in Arvada as well. And the red tape is wild. And just one little step to help, I think I can see where some folks are going to be like, it's not it's under $200. They're saving under $200, but it is one less thing on your checklist to hopefully get you there to provide the thing that, so many people need it. I think in your article, you talked about council members in the midst of this, right?
Yeah, which that was actually really interesting to hear from the council members who directly were saying, this affects me. I think it just goes to show that it affects so many parents, especially ones who don't necessarily have family in the area to help out with childcare. So Councilwoman Sarah Parody, I thought this was really interesting. She said that she has 2 young kids in public school right now, but the aftercare alone costs more than half of her council salary, which, council doesn't make tons and tons of money, but still that's, her full-time job, and it's taking up more than half
of her part-time care. Her kids don't need full-time care, and that's how much it costs.
Right. And so she said, I don't really know how other parents are surviving, which is, a good question. I would love to hear from some of your listeners. I'm not normally the one to do this, but I put a call out. I'm so curious about folks I just feel like this is such an area of passion for people, because it feels so frustrating, I think, for so many who are just trying to work and have a career while also being a parent, and it seems out of reach.
It totally is. And again, yeah, please share with us your thoughts, or if you're going through this, 720-500-5418, and let us know. We'll pass this on to Elliot. But yeah, for sure, because I'm also just thinking about the flexibility that my job has. For instance, I have the ability to like step out and go get my kid, or if I need to take time off, I have that ability. I know a lot of folks that work like hourly wage jobs where if they don't go to work, they don't get paid.
Right.
And or they work in professions where they cannot, I'm thinking about like emergency personnel or people where it's harder to have someone sub for you if you need to take care of your kid. And that's where these childcare facilities also come in handy. And even in the summer, I was actually just talking to a friend whose kids are out of school for the summer. And she's like, they're not quite old enough to be at home alone, but like I have to send them somewhere. And summer camps are highly competitive. This is a thing that's a year-round issue for parents.
Absolutely. And one thing that Councilwoman Amanda Sawyer brought up is it's many ages too. Like this is focused on early childhood education. But yeah, I mean, kids that are maybe wouldn't need to go to like a daycare facility, but still are too young to probably be like left to their own devices, are probably being left to their own devices in many cases because there's just a lack of places to put your kids to keep them safe.
Yeah, or just having those like intermediary places where your kid can go between school, or like, like the aftercare thing that Councilwoman Parody's talking about. I know that's a huge part of it. And even like my son is going into public schools this year, and during the summertime, we were already invited to his gym teacher at his school hosts like a fitness class every week because kids still need something to do. So it's like, I don't know. There's just so many components of this, and thinking about it's not just about childcare. It's about kids, A, being in a safe place, and B, being in a quality place where maybe they can get some continuing, you just want it to be fun. And I imagine how stressful it is for folks that are just trying to get into any childcare facility, let alone one that maybe even is close to you or something. And maybe this is just one little thing that could make this a little bit less stressful.
Yeah, and the city definitely acknowledged like we are not expecting this small change to suddenly open up the floodgates and there's going to be, dozens and dozens of childcare facilities opening, but I think they're hoping that it can be sort of this like symbolic show that the city is trying to make changes. And there was some, sort of talk of like, what else could we possibly do to lessen the red tape and to make it just a little bit easier. So maybe we're going to see some more on that. But again, since the state regulates a lot of this, I think much of it would need to come from that level. So I would imagine that we're going to continue to hear more about this because it is something that we're, starting to see as a top issue for folks on the federal level. I mean, this is a problem nationwide. So it's definitely top of mind for many.
It always makes me, I think Councilwoman Sawyer was like on a Zoom because she needed to be home with her kids, right? And it made me think about, this is nothing new for parents, right? This is just something that we're seeing maybe more because of the accessibility of things like Zoom show that there needs to be flexibility. But parents have always struggled with this,
Totally.
Since time immemorial.
Especially she even brought up, she was like, it kind of feels like COVID. Like, yes, I guess technically because I'm able to work remote, I can, be watching my kids and doing work, but it's really a lot to manage. And I feel like just hearing her mention that reminded me of like, oh my gosh, that just seemed like such a hard time for parents.
Yes. And the illusion that you can actually get work done while you have children around you is right. I'm sure she was doing her best, but it's really a struggle.
I thought it was also funny. This was originally brought up by Councilman Cashman. I shouldn't say funny because it's a very serious topic, but he used the word, he was trying to get a number on like how many kids are running around feral was the word that he used. And I thought that was really interesting. And then Councilwoman Sawyer kind of repeated that to say like, there's a lot. And it's like, it reminds me of just like being a kid. And it's like, it's actually a pretty good word for like when you're just sort of running around aimless, there's nothing productive happening.
But it's like, but I laughed only because I had an image immediately in my mind of myself as a kid. And like, we were obviously supervised, but it was like maybe a little bit looser sometimes.
Totally.
Or like you were kind of depending on your neighbor. Like, we had neighbor kids that were older and we were wandering. It was like kind of like go outside and come back when the streetlights come on kind of thing. And I know things have changed in certain ways around what, I think less kids are latchkey kids, but I don't think that necessarily has anything to do with the fact that kids still don't need childcare,
Right.
that families still don't really, really need this. So, I mean, hopefully this is a nudge. And honestly, it's something I'll probably be watching at the State House. I know there's always ongoing efforts, but, we're usually looking at funding issues, but this could also be maybe licensing requirements changing.
Absolutely. And there's going to be a lot of changes at the state level coming up in the next few years, obviously. So might see different things starting to happen.
Something to watch. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're switching gears. We're still talking city council, but we're talking nightlife. Okay, Elliot, another bill you've been tracking is about bars and clubs extending their hours. Currently, they can stay open and serve alcohol until 2 a.m. What is the change that council is looking to make? They've passed one reading of a bill. They're going to go to a second reading. What is this?
It's basically like a total revamp of the city's nightclub licensing, which my friends have been making fun of me because I keep referring to things as nightclubs, and no one really uses that term. But it's basically the places you go at night where you're listening to music, where you're drinking. Denver hasn't updated its licensing for those facilities in many, many years. I don't have off the top of my head when the last time it was updated, but it's been decades. So basically, this is going to bring all of that into sort of the modern day. It's going to simplify the licensing, which all of that kind of sounds boring. One of the most interesting parts of it is that it could allow some businesses that have a certain type of license to stay open until 4 a.m. Even if they're not if they're not serving alcohol anymore, they could still stay open for a couple extra hours with the hope that maybe then people won't all be pouring out onto the street at 2 a.m.
Sure, that 2 a.m. let out that I think is particularly a struggle in Lodo. I mean, it has been since I was going out in my early 20s and the early 2000s. But so it doesn't extend the time they can serve. That's still 2 a.m. But some businesses will be able to stay open until 4 a.m. So they could still have maybe bands or, DJs, or people could just be hanging out there. And that is one particular change to this. And what you said was interesting to me because, yes, the licensing part is kind of boring that they're streamlining the licensing process, right? And sort of putting this into 3 different new licenses. Can you get a little bit into that part of it? I know it is boring, but it does.
Yeah.
We'll touch on how this kind of can impact us as patrons.
Yeah. So I think in the past there were like 16 different types of cabaret licenses, and they like had a lot to do with whether dancing was happening or not. They called them like the footloose laws in Denver because it was like depended on
if it was legal to dance.
Yeah, whether you were dancing there or not. But the new ones will be under 3 main categories. One is limited entertainment licenses, which would be for any place that offers live entertainment, a dance floor, or target sports. So like axe throwing would be an example.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So this is basically for like amplified performances. So somebody with a guitar in the corner of a coffee shop is not necessarily going to need this type of license. I don't think they would need any kind of license, actually. But if there is somebody up on a stage, the Grizzly Rose would probably be a good example. And then the next tier would be nightclub entertainment, which would be licenses that go to businesses that offer live music, DJ performances, or dancing, and then also have a capacity of at least 100 people and operate after 10 p.m. So actually that would probably be more the Grizzly Rose.
Sure. But because I mean, they do live shows, but they're also known for dancing. I guess I would say specifically.
Stay open late, those kinds of places. So limited entertainment would be kind of probably a smaller place that isn't necessarily as many people or isn't staying open as late. And then the final category is just adult entertainment. So that's essentially strip clubs.
Okay. But like you said, it's going from 16 to 3.
Yes.
So it sounds like the hope is streamlining this permitting process, because if we've heard anything from local businesses, is that sometimes the permitting process itself can be really complicated.
Totally. And they're like, even if they fully want to follow all the rules, it can be confusing, and they're not even sure what license they need.
Yeah. So something that was interesting to me is part of this process, the streamlining, is these licensing, the decisions for permitting won't necessarily have to go in front of the public. So I think as it stands, if you were like applying to open a bar with live music in a neighborhood, you needed to have a public hearing so that neighbors could come and if they wanted to support or push back on it coming into the neighborhood. And so that is changing a little bit, right? Like
yes, yeah.
the public's involvement.
Currently, any business that seeks a cabaret license, which is like, similar to those types of licenses I was just talking about, would have to have a hearing before they could get their license. Under this new change, that wouldn't be the case. It would only happen if basically the community requests a hearing. But there's a pretty low bar for requesting a hearing. I think from what I have heard from the city, the main reason they're doing this is that the vast majority of these hearings are not contested and end up just taking up time and no one attends them or pushes back on them. And, the businesses themselves like sometimes hire an attorney to go through these. So it's like, again, kind of trying to decrease the steps that they have to take.
I have to say, I just am so interested in this because this is a situation in my neighborhood right now. So over the last 4 years, this building that is very close to my house has been remodeling to become a nightclub. When we moved in, it was a furniture store. So just to give you a context for like the type, we're like right on the edge of a commercial strip.
Okay.
And so that was the sort of 9 to 5-ish business that was there. And then it was empty. And now they've been working on turning it into a nightclub. And there was a big effort in the neighborhood, some folks organized to push back on it. And the hearings were where I think that was happening.
Right.
I mean, full disclosure, my husband and I kind of were like, we can't really say either way on this because this is also the profession my husband works in. And so pushing back on it felt a little bit like, but also am I stoked that maybe there's going to be a crazy nightclub that's like around the block from my house? Not my favorite thing, but all that to say, what I find interesting here is, like you're saying, is the majority of the situations are not this, right? It's like, maybe it's just a small brewery or something that's trying to open and having to this tedious nature of setting up a court date and getting everything ready for no one to show up to talk about it.
Right.
Just getting rid of that. And then people can still, it sounds like neighbors could still request this hearing, but it's not required now.
Yes, for sure.
Okay. Well, it'll be interesting to see how this goes. I mean, I think if anything, like I said, I think businesses will be happy that maybe there's one less step to take to opening their business. But again, we're at the first reading of this. We've got another reading. Maybe we'll see some more information come out of it in this next reading.
For sure, yeah. So coming around this coming Monday, there will be an even deeper conversation about this. During the first reading, there was some initial pushback from a couple council members who were unsure about some of the things you mentioned, some of the records that will be required to keep, like for adult entertainment. Councilwoman Serena Gonzalez Gutierrez voiced concerns that could violate privacy of adult entertainment workers.
Sure.
So expecting to hear some amendments related to that, expecting at least 1 or 2 council members to ultimately vote no. I wouldn't expect many more than that. I'd be pretty surprised if it ended up like totally failing. But I think there's going to be some more conversation about, fine tuning this. And then even after it goes into place, there's going to be a whole rulemaking phase, which is like when they figure out all the nitty gritty things. So there should still be a lot of opportunities for folks to weigh in and, voice their concerns or support for different parts of this.
Well, stay tuned, folks. I'm super interested in this. If you live anywhere near a commercial area and you're like resident, that mix, I think it'll be interesting to see, but we'll definitely be watching. Okay, we're going to take one more break. And when we come back, we're going to continue the nightlife conversation, but this time it's about unionizing. This episode is brought to you by Denver Health. Summer in Colorado means trails, sunshine, and sometimes the unexpected. John Froelich felt off during a hike west of Denver. He drove straight to Denver Health, where doctors found he was having a serious heart attack. Denver's healthcare team got him the treatment he needed fast. And 6 months later, John crossed the finish line at the Colfax Half Marathon. John's story is a reminder of what can happen when Coloradans go out and live their summer. With locations across Denver, a clinic in Winter Park, and virtual care available 7 days a week, Denver Health is never far from wherever summer takes you. At Denver Health, they're with you for life's journey. Learn more at denverhealth.org/survivorstory. That's denverhealth.org/survivorstory. This episode is brought to you by the Colfax Avenue Business Improvement District. Celebrate Colfax at the 4th Annual Colfax Indie Bash on Wednesday, July 22nd from 6 to 9 p.m. at Pete's Satire Lounge, featuring us. That's right, we'll be doing a live CityCast Denver recording with some great special guests. You don't want to miss it. This free community celebration features local food and drinks, art, music, the characters of Colfax Awards, and more. Plus, there's good reason to arrive early besides, hanging out with me and the rest of the CityCast Denver crew, because the first 50 people in the door will receive a limited edition canvas Colfax tote bag. Stop by the We Back the Facts booth to snag your Fax Pass to unlock discounts and prizes along the East Colfax corridor. Then get in the independent spirit and check out your fave Colfax businesses during Indie Week, running July 26th through August 1st. Use your tote bag at participating Indie Week retailers on Colfax to receive 10% off. Don't miss it. Plan your week at colfaxab.com/indie-week. That's colfaxab.com/indie-week. We'll see you there. Okay, we're back. So there was a story in Westward this week about audio engineers at 3 local venues, the Federal Theater, the Oriental Theater, and HQ. They have voted to unionize. This is a sort of a group of 3 small independent theaters run by a group of folks here. This is not an AEG or a Live Nation situation. These are fully independent venue owners. But the audio engineers, these are the folks that are behind the scenes that if you're going to a concert, you don't necessarily know they're there. In fact, I would say if you don't notice, if the show is good, then you don't notice the sound. If the sound is bad, you really notice it. Elliot, I don't know if you've ever had this experience at a concert where you're like, oh my God, what is happening right now?
The only thing I can think of is once being at a electronic show and the music was so loud that at like a couple hours in, I got a tummy ache because I was like, my organs were being vibrated by the pure volume of the music. I don't know if maybe I'm just like a wuss, but it was pretty uncomfortable.
I don't think you're a wuss. I think that can be a peril of certain types of music, right? But to that point, I think that's a great segue for folks to sort of picture what we're going to talk about right now, which is the audio engineers at these venues are organizing. So when you are in the audience, there is a front of house sound engineer who's making sure the sound is good for you, the audience member. And maybe that is adjusting the bass a little bit. And then there's a back of house engineer who is on the stage side of it, making sure that everything sounds good for the artists that are performing, which seems like maybe if you've never performed, like, why would you need that? But it's so crucial to, like, say you're playing guitar and all of a sudden you have what's called monitors. So there's speakers just for the performers to hear themselves and each other. Mm-hmm. If you're playing guitar and drums are just the only thing that's coming into your monitor, you can't hear anything else and it can be really hard to play. So this is it's a specialized craft. It's a balancing act that these folks do to make the sound good, not just for you, the audience, but for the musicians or the DJs on the stage. So the concern here with the venues, at least with the audio engineers at these venues, is recently some hours were cut and they were cutting down. The venues had cut down. Some shows would just have a front of house, would just have one engineer altogether that's handling both. And the audio engineers' concerns was not necessarily their hours being cut, but that their quality of the shows and the craft, the way that they do their craft would be cut into by their ability to do that if it's just one of them running the whole show. So I just kind of want to contextualize it for folks that are like, why does it matter? You know what I mean? If you have 2 sound engineers.
Totally. I feel like you said, you only really see this or think about it when things go really wrong. There's that really famous clip of, I think it's Mariah Carey at like a Christmas show and her, or just like, there's a lot of clips of performers and they're like messing with their ear mic. And if they have to like take it out,
yes.
And then they're just kind of, I don't really know because I'm not a singer, but you can't hear yourself singing. And there's that clip of Mariah Carey, and she's like able to still sing perfectly. And she clearly is like so irritated that it's not working.
And she's such a pro that she can do it. And what you're describing is actually called an in-ear monitor, which is that thing I was describing with the speakers, but it's just in your ear. So yeah, imagine that you're only hearing like the microphone of the backup singer next to you, and you're not hearing yourself at all. It can throw off the entire show. The other thing is too, you might hear feedback sometimes if there's like a cable or something that's loose. If you've ever heard a crackling at a show or like a really loud, high-pitched noise and you're like, oh my God, that's the sound engineer's job, and they're trying to fix that. So they really are crucial to this situation. So Westward reports that the engineers, for their part, again, say this isn't about the pay or the hours, but more about the quality of what they can provide at the shows. And they felt that they were left out of the negotiations when they were told that hours and things would be cut. And I do want to say the independent venue owners, also, I'm sorry, full disclosure here. I know folks on both sides of this situation. Keegan McKenzie is one of the audio engineers quoted here. Scott Happel is one of the owners of these three, co-owners of these three venues. I've worked with both of these gentlemen, so I know folks on both sides of this. So I want to be transparent. But the venue owners, for their part, said they pushed back, urging employees not to unionize because of, they said, other concerns. The statement that they sent out to their employees said, in part, quote, while we don't know what would end up in a collective bargaining agreement between the company and the union, collective bargaining agreements often include provisions such as the following. So other things like zero tolerance for drug and alcohol use, including prohibitions of use of marijuana and alcohol, scheduling that requires pre-start and end times, including mandates for employees. So I think what the venue owners are saying here is there's a lot of other regulations and requirements that we don't necessarily adhere to as an independent venue that we may now have to put into place if you unionize. And for the record, this is the back and forth I think that happens with any unionizing conversation, right?
Right.
And so this is such a tough situation to me. I feel both sides.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that they sent out such a clear statement asking folks not to approve it. And then obviously it didn't work. Like it overwhelmingly passed. So.
Yeah. And that's what they said like you said, the venue owners in this message out to them said, we think you will agree this is not in your best interest or the interest of HQ. Vote no. And again, like you said, I think the vote was overwhelming. So now the union has the employees, the sound employees have voted to unionize. The IATSE Local 7, which is one of the unionizing groups, is taking this on, and they are now working on starting the whole negotiation process. So now that the employees have voted to unionize, now negotiations will start. Mm-hmm. I think this is a really interesting conversation for us to watch in a city where, like many cities our size, we are dominated by two big promoters, AEG and Live Nation. There's very rarely a small group of venue owners that are still completely independent. And I just think that's what makes this a little complicated, right? It's a small business, but it's also folks that
absolutely
that want fair working conditions.
Absolutely, yeah. I think I'll be really curious to see what happens here and like hear from the audio engineers themselves, and then also concert goers if they notice if they have noticed any issues, and then if they notice an improvement going forward. I also think it's just really interesting that they're saying we don't have an issue with pay, because that's obviously so often the issue.
One of the big sticking points, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's Scott, for one of the owners, did say that. He said we pay above the going rate in the city, and again, like the sound engineers said, that's not necessarily the issue, but I feel you. That would be a huge part of this. But yeah, we'd love, like Elliot said, we'd love to hear from you. Are you a concert goer that maybe has noticed this? Are you a small venue or a small concert promoter that is on one side of this? Or maybe you're a sound engineer yourself. I would love to hear from all sides of this, because I see how complex it is, and I see how important it is to our city, because live music is a huge thing that happens here. So give us a call, 720-500-5418, and let us know what you think. Elliot, as always, I enjoy talking to you. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Loved being on.
Hey, it's Bree. Real quick, I have a little favor to ask you. So CityCast is doing our annual listener survey, and it really, really helps us out if you take it, because it's how we learn more about you, our audience, and how we can serve you and the city better with this show. So if you don't mind, go to citycast.fm/survey. Take the survey. We promise it only takes about 7 minutes. We timed it out, and it really, really, really helps us. The more folks we have fill it out, the more information we have, and it helps us shape this show. So again, go to citycast.fm/survey, fill that out, 7 minutes. You could be entered to win a $250 Visa gift card and some cool CityCast Denver swag. Again, citycastdenver.fm/survey. Fill it out, please, please, please. Thanks. That's all for today here on CityCast Denver. If you enjoyed this show, why not take a minute to tell a sound engineer about us? Rate the show wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and subscribe to our morning newsletter at denver.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. See ya!